Would you rather live in a world without art or without philosophy?
That's a good one.
Okay.
Right. First of all, let's lay some foreground here on what we define philosophy as.
Yeah, I was going to ask that.
Because I would wage that for a lot of people, if we remove Immanuel Kant and all of his entourage, if you remove... I think, James, can you name me a philosopher that isn't Socrates?
Fuck!
That's kind of my point.
I can't.
There's a
There's a lot of them.
in the book, The Courage to Be Disliked.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the guy that wrote the book is a philosopher, but I don't know his name.
Yeah, well, that's kind of my point. I would say, if we're outlining these parameters, I don't think many people are drawing from Marcus Aurelius on a day-to-day basis,
Or
but
Aurelius, yeah.
there
I
are...
said I've got a book of his.
Yeah, Meditations,
Yeah.
that you haven't read.
Yes, in my drawer.
My point is, if we're taking away your sort of your quintessential or your
How do you know it's Meditations?
because I've got it and I've read it.
Did I give it to you?
No, I bought it and read it
It's just coincidence.
How did? Oh, did I say that the book that I had
because he's
was the
only
same
written one book and it's called
one?
Meditations.
Oh really? Oh shit!
Yeah, Meditations was never actually supposed to come out. It's not. He's not an author.
Oh,
He was a
really?
Roman emperor.
Ah.
So Meditations was a notebook. It was a journal to himself, and the work within that came out as a for us to read because basically they just found it and published it. It wasn't actually supposed to be for public viewing. My point: a lot of philosophers we wouldn't be particularly bothered with losing on a day-to-day basis, but philosophy I would wage is a different thing.
Yeah.
Because you can be philosophical without being a philosopher. If you take any perspective, I mean, for instance, you've heard the phrase skeptical.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Skepticism is a philosophy. So there is a great deal of your life that you would actually lose without philosophy, without realising. There's a number of things, your general approach to the world that would change dramatically if you didn't have philosophy, because it is actually so deeply embedded. It's baked into our psyche. Philosophy is essentially just the sort of just the speaking of the heart. It's speaking your beliefs.
Now define art.
Well, that's a good question. That's a really good question, actually, because how would you define art?
I don't know, technically everything's art, isn't it?
Exactly. This is a good point. Is
Music artists.
yeah, so you're doing away with music.
Loads of different.
You'd be doing... This is my point, is if you're saying artistry just as the picture on the wall, then I don't think many people would be have any qualms with me saying that you'd keep philosophy and get rid of the Mona Lisa. But if we're bringing music into it, then it's a very different question. And you have to bring music into it. I would also wage you'd have to bring sport into it.
Yeah.
Sport is artistry.
Mhm.
Creation in general.
Mm-hmm.
I think you'd be closer to losing a sort of the sort of essence of existence if you got rid of art.
Yeah.
The world would be much simpler without philosophy. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. We probably wouldn't understand ourselves as well, but monkeys don't understand themselves particularly well, and they're quite content.
Yeah, because you can use philosophy as a guidance, can't you?
That's the idea of philosophy. Philosophy is for the intensive purpose of guidance.
And growth.
Preferably.
Imagine that reading
I'd
philosophy and
choose a
going
world without
backwards.
philosophy after you said that.
Yeah, I think it would have to be philosophy, but it's not an easy answer. Because I'm not sure how well I would do in a world without art. Because I think there's so much that includes art. Ollie and I were talking about this actually, of the creativity is sort of defined as something that it's savoured or sort of attributed to only your. If you say someone's creative, you're talking about them in a artistic sense. So they might be an excellent drawer, or painter, or musician.
Producer.
It's something along those lines. I don't think it's quite that way. I think creativity is far more nuanced than that. If you didn't know how to fix your car and you essentially worked it out, I would wager that you're drawing on the same sort of basis as creativity by doing that. You're pulling on your resources. And I would say artistry would be the same thing. How many things? Cooking. Could you still cook in the same way if you were to lose art?
No, I was going to say, technically, anything that anyone's really good at is an art.
Exactly.
Because you make it an art.
Exactly.
It's your art. And then we'd have no talents, skills, entertainment. We would just we wouldn't have clothes.
Yeah, I mean, it's fashion.
Yeah,
it's a good point.
It's an art. You wouldn't have any, say, like trends, for example. So there'd be.
You'd have none of this in here.
Yeah.
No.
This is all art.
Exactly. That's where this sort of comes to a head, where you go. The only question is, I would sort of, if I'm going to take this for the sake of arguing the point, how much of your understanding of the world would you lose if philosophy was gone? Because philosophy makes up a lot more of your beliefs than you think it does. We're not talking the same way with art, where your knee-jerk reaction would be to think of a painting on a wall. Philosophy, the proverbial painting on the wall here, would be your Stoics, your Buddhists, all of the rest of philosophy that I don't need to look through. We all understand it. It's not just that you'd be losing. You'd be losing a great deal of your worldview. And you wouldn't realise that until it was gone. So I think the same thing could be said of sort of how much of the world would you lose without art with philosophy. How much of your ability to actually connect with a person would you lose if you weren't understanding of some basic concepts of philosophy? That's my point.
It would. Yeah, that's true.
We both fall in the same category, really.
I think the answer is philosophy.
Yeah.
Because I think you make a brilliant point that art is. Well, you both you brought the point together very nicely. That art is essentially everything. If you look at the world through an artistic lens, anything can be art. You can make it such.
Yeah, I don't mean to bring it back to space and shit.
You can bring it back to space.
Or you can bring it back to
and shit. Yeah.
And Planet Deer. But science, like physics and astronomy, that's art. I think that's art, because if you think about it, so for example, the telescopes that we've got up in space, so James Webb Telescope and the Hubble Space Telescope, them taking photos and finding out more, I would consider that an art.
Why?
Because it's how do I say it? It's development, it's change. We're learning new things about our universe, and we're discovering new things about our universe. It's like how I mentioned with trends as well. Trends, it's a new thing. It's us developing, and it's us. It could be space can be seen as entertainment. It can be used as picture on the wall, that form of art as well. It can be.
Do you agree with that?
Now this guy's got a point.
Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that.
Yeah. I don't really know how else to explain it, really.
I see what you're saying.
It can be used as a lot of things.
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and we're talking through your eyes.
He's saying you're beautiful.
I did. That was the roundabout way of saying that. No, my point is, though, you will look at that.
I might look at it as an art.
Yeah, someone else.
Someone
wouldn't.
else might not. Someone else might think, you old boring fuck.
Yeah, you
Old.
kneecapless, 20-year-old faced, 80-year-old bodied, feeble.
Yeah.